All right, I think we did it. All right, somebody tell me if you can actually see me and hear me. I'd hate to be talking to myself. Let me get my chat up right here. Oh, I see a wave from Kevin. Hopefully not just a random wave, hopefully because you can actually see me. Hey, everybody. So while I'm making sure that you can hopefully see me, good morning, good afternoon. What's everybody working on today? What are you guys doing? What weird things are happening out there? Yes, okay, you can't see me. Thank you. Yeah, what are the challenges that people are doing? Or I should ask, maybe we can ask a different question. What's the oldest browser that someone is having to write code to support today? That is not a problem that I have, because all of you lovely people are the customers at SymphonyCast, so I expect that everyone's on the absolute latest and greatest browser, so we always get to use the newest and coolest stuff. All right, let's see here. Today, we're going to kind of mess around with Twig Components, and if you joined me last time, I'm not going to go for 2.5 hours. I got a little excited last time, and just kept talking and talking. Today, I actually brought coffee to stop and sip occasionally. Today, we're going to do, originally I thought Twig Components, just Twig Components, not live components. I asked on Twitter what people wanted to try and hang out, and I got a lot of stuff about live components. So we're going to start with Twig Components, and then kind of, I don't know, kind of see what happens. I have a list of things. I'm checking the chats here. So Anatholia says, my initial thought, Twig/live components, how can this be combined in correct way with React components, web components in a component-driven approach? So it's definitely a different paradigm. I think that, I hate to say this directly, but I think you are doing React components or Vue components or whatever, or you are doing Twig components, or really, like, more broadly, what's building your HTML? Are you building your HTML in JavaScript, or are you building your HTML on the server side with Twig? And I think those are really the two choices, the kind of, build it in JavaScript front-end framework, or the HTML over the wire. That's what hot-wired, what is it? You know, and you see like the hot-wired here, right? That stands for HTML over, or doesn't stand for, it means HTML over the wire. So we're putting HTML across the network. So yeah, I wouldn't combine them. And I think what I want to tell people about front-end frameworks is, if you want to use a front-end framework, if that's the direction you want to go, then do it. Build an API in Symfony, and then use the front-end frameworks tools. So historically, we have, like, Encore allows you to build React and Vue, and I think Svelte also. But I would say if you're building a front-end framework in Next.js or Vue, then I would use their tools and their scaffolding to get that all set up, and then have it talk to your Symfony API. You can put that all in one repository, but you'd have two different directories for your front-end and your API. And that's exactly how API Platform's distribution is set up. If you get their their distribution has Docker in it, has your API in it, has your front end, I think in Next.js by default in it, and they're all in the same repository. They're just in different directories. So I hope that answers your questions. I would go those two different things. Oh, I imagine them as 2 points of view for the same target. I don't know about that. You'll have to give me more information about that. I'm definitely focused on the side of things of, like, let's render things inside of PHP and make them super reactive, and then not have to do things inside of React. And I think with the tutorial that I'm working on right now, I think people are going to be really surprised. I'm really surprised by the amounts of things that we can do without writing any custom JavaScript. You may have seen on Twitter yesterday, I built data tables. Actually, I have it right here. Let me fast forward here. This is my little tutorial builder here. I want to go not too far forward. Yeah, that's perfect, actually. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on a second. I got off script here, and now I'm messing myself up. There we go, live streaming. at its finest. I'm just undoing because I did not mean to do that. Holy moly, what did I do? What's the better command for this? Where I basically want to start over. I always just end up deleting everything. I want to start over on this branch and undo all of my changes. Can I do get reset head? Okay, thank you. Get reset. These are commands I have to look up every time. This is the nice thing about. All right, what about those up? Ooh, get clean dash F. This is great. Oh man, this is the best. Thank you. All right. Now, the branch I actually wanted was probably main. There we go. Whoops, except I have... what did I do here? So yeah, this is all just a bunch of internal stuff. Get branch. You know what? Let's... You're seeing my tutorial building tools in action, except that I went off on a different branch and totally did stuff that you're not supposed to do. What am I doing wrong here now? Oh, Kevin, I like that alias. See, I don't use get reset hard much because it scares me. All right, maybe well, actually, I do need to get this working. Let's see, tuts reset. And let's see, get branch. Should be clean. Maybe, you know, I'm going to delete those. Just in case that's causing a problem. Yeah, when we build tutorials, we actually build them as a bunch of different Git branches that we can kind of fast forward and rewind. I think I may have broken mine more than I've ever broken one before. Let's try resetting one more time. Okay. Yeah, new laptop. Yeah, no, I'm actually thinking about them. Like, maybe I need to clone from somewhere else. You came to the right place if you want to see me battle with my CLI. All right, let's... Can I do this? Yeah, that worked. Can I do this? No. Oh, because it already exists in the directory. This is one of those cases of reading your errors. So I got myself in a bad spot, and then I had an uncommitted assets directory. All right, let's look here. That looks good. I just need to armed. Let's just get rid of these directories. There we go. My goodness. What a way to... I mean, it's only 9:55 here. I'm already breaking things. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of live streaming. So, yeah, when I record tutorials, I get to edit all this garbage out that I mess up. I've done trainings before where people were like, do you really make no mistakes? And I'm like, no, I totally make mistakes all the time. It turns out it's very easy to edit videos, to take out little typos, make it look like I type really fast. All right, now, this is the project I wanted to work on anyways. Of course, composer install, because I'm moving all around. And actually, that's a good error there. So I just saw composer install. This is kind of a new thing with Asset Mapper. So we run composer install, right? With Asset Mapper 6.4, if you saw me last time, all of the vendor assets are downloaded locally. So this is the error you're going to see if you like pull down a new project and your teammate added a new vendor file. So I have something called JS Confetti, which is as fun as what it sounds like. And it says the JS Confetti vendor asset is missing. Try running import map install. So it's just like the composer install, basically. So import map install. And all that does is download files into an assets/vendor directory. Boop. Oh, and then last thing is Tailwind. So I didn't talk about this last week. You can use Tailwind. We're going to talk about this in the tutorial. You can use Tailwind with Asset Mapper. There's a bundle for it. It works great. I'm using Tailwind in this project that we're going to be messing around with today. So I just ran that Tailwind build. That's why it looked terrible. So yeah, so anyways, this entire area right here, if you saw yesterday, this is all, this little data tables type of thing is all done entirely without writing any JavaScript. So this is just kind of the thing I'm talking about, where we can do a lot more and make things really nice just with normal Twig and HTML and all that kind of stuff. So you can totally use front-end frameworks if you want to. I don't really care, but you don't have to, because you can do lots of really cool stuff without it. All right, so let's get down and start doing some stuff. So let's do Twig Components. Why do I have that open? There we go. And I don't need this open. So I'm gonna kind of meander around a little bit. I have a list of some stuff that I maybe want to work on. Oh, except I deleted that file. Hold on a second. I had a notes file. This is why I am scared of git reset hard and git clean, because I totally deleted that uncommitted file. Oh no, and actually I deleted something else much worse. Hold on a second. Bear with me. Where's my local VSS? Local history. Show history. 12 hours, external change. Yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to revert this. Has anybody else ever done this? Like, you shoot yourself in the foot so bad with Git that you actually have to revert back using... Alright, that's good. And actually the other thing I need is, hopefully I can get this back the same way. This is actually even more important. Ooh, notes file's already there. Oh, because I have it ignored from Git. We're good. There we go. Ta-da! All right, so here we go. All right, so let's start messing around with Twig Components. I'm actually going to rewind our project back a little bit here so I can get less fanciness. Let's see here. I'm going to give us Tailwind, but nothing else. All right, so let's take a quick tour of the project. The project does that on every page. That's going to be a little distracting. Let's remove that. Where did I put that? There we go. Cool. So yeah, quick tour of the project. We have this page here. We have some planets. We have planets and voyages. We have a couple of CRUDs. These are basically all just generated from make CRUD, plus I added some styling on there. Oh yeah, pro tip, I always have a .ignored directory in my projects that is globally ignored to store temporary files I use. That's actually a really good idea. I do that for this notes file. I have always have a underscore notes file I put in every project, and that is in my global git ignore. But having an entire .ignored directory and putting stuff in there actually strikes me as an even better idea, because occasionally I do need a second or third file that I want to have ignored. So let's see here. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of mess with Twig Components a little bit, and feel free to ask questions and kind of direct things where you want to go. The simplest, so Twig Components are basically, they're basically Twig includes, except that you can provide variables to them. So classically when you have a Twig include, right? Let's find... Actually, this is a good example here. So we have a Twig include. This is just from the make CRUD, and it's just including underscore form.html Twig. As you all know, when you use the Twig include, we need to pass in all the variables that this template's going to use. So I have a form variable here, so there's going to be a form variable inside of there. So one of the use cases for Twig Components is going to be a case when you want to effectively render an include, except you don't want to pass in the variables. You just want them to, you want it to be standalone. Because if I copied this include to a different template, it would break because the variables that this template needs wouldn't be there. So actually we have an example of this. Let me open up our home page. So if we look at the home page, here, we have kind of this left sidebar with planets, and we have this right table. So this left sidebar with planets is actually brought in with this little include right now. So reason this works is because we're just passing in a planets variable from our controller. So let me give you the whole view here. So this is our home page, right? And inside of our home page, we query for all the planets. We have a planets variable in our template. That planets variable is available in this little partial, and it loops over planets. So of course, if I take this include and I decide I want to put it somewhere else, like on the, I don't know, the voyage index page, like the CRUD index page, that's going to look terrible, first of all. And second of all, it's of course going to break things because we don't have a variable called planets. Boo. There we go. I lost my chat for a second. All right. So this is one of the things that I actually tweeted about this like a month ago. I run into this with Leanna sometimes. She'll have something. Leanna's my wife. She's also our front-end designer. She'll have something and she wants to move it somewhere else. And she's like, it doesn't work here. And I'm like, it should. It should be just as simple. In a lot of cases, is just like copying this chunk somewhere else and making it stand alone. So let's convert this planet list into a Twig component. We don't actually have Twig components installed, so let's install it. Symfony / so yeah, I make lots of typos. Symfony UX Twig component. Wait for my internet to catch up. I'll have some coffee while we wait. Cool. And let's see what that did. The latest version of Twig Components does come with a new configuration file. That's a relatively new thing. It's not particularly important. See, there it is, Kevin. It's our loading. Come on. Come on, PHP Storm. There's not that many files in there. All right. So it's not particularly important, but you can now divide your components into different directories. So, for example, you could, I don't know, say something like this. So there's you can expand this configuration more, but it's basically saying if I have a Twig component and it's in this namespace, then look for its template inside of here. It also has to do with the auto naming. So if we created a class whose full name, I know we never do this, this is totally pretend code. If we create a class that has this name right here, the prefix here is going to match this prefix, and so its name is just going to be alert. So when we use it later, we'll just name it alert. But if I had said alert/success, then in this case, its name is actually going to be this part together, which inside of Twig, when you render it, you actually render it as alert:success. Total side thing, if that was confusing, let me know. But anyways, this new config is just a way to organize your template, your components if you want to, and also give it kind of the root namespace that it should use with the auto naming. Okay, so let's go in and actually, you know what, we can. Do I have Maker Bundle installed? I think so. Oh, I totally do. Let's make a Twig component. Let's call it planet list. Let's not make it a live component. We at least don't need it alive right now. Cool, planet list. Let's see if it put it in the right spots. Come on, PHP Storm, you can do it. It's in there somewhere. There it is. Twig components, perfect. Planet list. Awesome. So as I mentioned earlier, this matches the prefix that we had in the config file. So this is going to be the name of our component. Let's just try rendering that real quick. We also have a templates components planet list.html twig. And inside of there, let's just say hello world. Let's leave that include there for a second. Component, planet list. Awesome. And let's go back to the home page. There we go. Cool. So there we go. So you can see that really right now it's really nothing more than just a Twig include. Also relatively new. You don't even need the class. We're gonna mess with the class. We do want the class in this case, but if you want an anonymous component, like you just need, you just want to be able to use this component feature and have it render a template for you. you can do that, and you can basically, if we deleted this class right here, this would still work. It would just skip to rendering the template directly. It's called an anonymous component. It has its usages, but in this case, we do need... Sorry, my watch was going crazy. We do need this component. All right. Let's see here. What do we want to do? Let's just start kind of really simple here. Yeah, this is not what we're ultimately going to do, but in case people haven't seen live components before, let's do Venus. There we go. So when you render a component, you can pass in an array of props. And it can get more complicated than this, but basically the name of every prop, so in this case, name, actually let's call it planet name, is going to be used to hydrate a property of that name. So we pass in Venus here to planet name, and that's going to be the planet name property. And then when you're inside of your template, all of your public variables, all of your public properties become available as local variables. So because we have a property called planet name, we have a variable called planet name. You can also say this.planet name. This is going to be an instance of your actual planet list component object, but just for convenience, we allow you to also just say planet name. So not surprisingly, we see hello world and we see Venus because that's what we passed in. Now, what we really want in this case is, right, we don't really need to pass in anything. We just needed to render the entire planet list. And in order to do that, let me get rid of this planet name thing. I'm actually going to take our planet list partial. Let's actually just delete this entirely. So I'm going to copy the contents and I'm going to paste these into here. Cool. Let's delete planet list entirely. Awesome. And then one other thing that you'll see is we always render attributes on the outer level of your element. You don't have to do that. You should. The reason that's cool is you can actually pass extra stuff inside of here. So you could pass like class MB4, and that would actually because there is no class property on our component class, it's going to identify that as like basically an extra prop being passed in, and any extra props that are passed in end up as attributes. So we'll see that in a second. We'll see the class actually show up as an attribute, which is really, really nice. But first thing we're going to run into if we try this is an error, because we still have the same problem. Variable planets doesn't exist, right? It's still rendering our template. We still have the planets variable that doesn't exist. So how do we get the planets variable? So the key thing here is that our components are actually services. So we can use auto wiring like normal. So how would we normally get the array of planets? We would just do the query for them like we did in our controller. So I'm going to say private planet repository. Oops. Yeah, that's right. Cool. And then down here, I'm going to create a little accessor for it. So let's say get planets. Seems like a good name. There we go. And it's that simple. Now, if we try this right now, it's still not going to work. Let's look at the planets variable doesn't exist, because in order for this to work, we would need an actual like public planets property. Remember, it's the properties that become public. But we don't need to do that because we can also just call this method directly if we want to. So instead of for planet in planets, we say for planet in this dot get planets. Or because it's Twig, right, we can be lazy and say this dot planets. And it exploded because I'm still probably referencing that somewhere, aren't I? Ha ha ha, that's right. I didn't delete it from down here. There we go. Now it works exactly like before. And where's our UL? Haha, remember that MB4 on the UL? So this is back in our homepage. I passed that MB4. Let's change that to MB8. I don't know. And you can see that's popping out on the UL. So that's kind of the purpose of that attributes thing. And if you want to, you can even make this planets a local variable. I'll just mention this because you'll see it sometimes. So if you do want to have a like a method expose a local variable, you can use expose in template. So in this case, it sees it's called get planets, so it's going to kind of like strip off the get part and just call it planets inside of the template. So let's change this back to, oh, I did already change it all the way back to planets. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, that's kind of like one of my first favorite use cases for Twig Components, because we can now just copy and paste this anywhere. It's like a standalone thing. You don't always need this everywhere. So I think some people are so excited about this idea, which is cool, that they want to replace every include in their project with a component. And I don't know, it just depends on the situation. If you really are just reusing a small chunk of template, you can keep it as an include. You know, like the reasons for using a Twig component for me are, one, I need to provide extra variables, or two, maybe I want this convenience of adding extra attributes on the outer element. But if you don't have that situation, then you don't really need to, you can just use an include, and that's fine. So this is how we originally built the Twig component system. Kevin says, exposing template also makes the method lazy. It'll be called once. Oh yeah, that's a really good point. So, well, it's not exactly lazy. It's just like, it's more like cached. So yeah, as soon as we put expose and template here, right before rendering our template, the component will always call get planets, because it needs to call this method and then set it on the planets variable. The advantage that Kevin was talking about is before, if we had said like this.planets, and maybe up here we said like this.planets length. So before we had expose and template, you know, this.planets is going to call the method. So this would actually call get planets and execute a query. And this would actually call get planets and execute a query. So by adding the expose and template, and then just using the planets variable, it's going to call it once before it renders our template, pass the variable in, pass the result in as planets, and then it's only going to be called once. There is also a computed variables feature where you can actually make things truly lazy. If you want to check into that, you can. Yeah, I like that I can inject services into the components too. That was one of my favorite things. That's kind of a actually Kevin kind of made that happen. Services are these components are super weird because they are actually services, but unlike probably any other service in your container, they're not shared. So you actually can have multiple instances of the planet list service around at a time. So, you know, it makes sense, right? If we, you know, rendered this right below again, that would actually create two different planet list objects internally, and they can each have their own individual properties, but they are also services, which is really cool. Yeah, server controller. Yeah, really, like if you think about these components as controllers, like they really are. They're kind of like a controller that's tied to a single template and can contain state. They're kind of like this Frankenstein of honestly of like kind of convenience. All right. So I don't ever actually render my my components like that anymore. I render them like this. So this is the optional Twig HTML syntax, which I absolutely love. Internally, it actually just has a layer that basically just rewrites it to what we had before. But that works perfectly. And yeah, we're going to talk more about that syntax, but I love the HTML syntax because you can pass the attributes in as variables. Let's see here. If we had, let's say we had a Twig variable called toUpper. Let's say we wanted to pass a prop in here called uppercase. We wanted to set that to toUpper. The way you can do that, again, it's modeled after other frameworks, is you can put a colon in front of it. As soon as you put a colon in front of one of these, what you put inside of here is going to be Twig code. So now we can use that toUpper variable. So this is going to pass an uppercase prop inside of there. If I don't do anything else, what did I do wrong here? Oh, set. Aha. So if I don't do anything else, that's going to pass in just the upper. It's just going to become an uppercase attribute, right? Because we don't actually have it as a property on our components, but we could add it, right? We could say public public bool to upper equals, how about false by default? Oh, actually, I'm calling it uppercase. Cool. And then because we have this uppercase now, so actually just by, even though I'm not using this yet, just as soon as we have this property here, you're going to see this little uppercase thing go away because it's going to be recognized now as a, as not as an attribute, but actually as a prop that's being hydrated onto your component. And of course, down here we could use the uppercase, right? So what did I call that? Uppercase. Uppercase. Upper else planet.name. Cool. Okay, let's not. I'm trying to get out of the habit of fixing these errors as quickly as possible. Like, let's see this unexpected token name of value planet. What did I do wrong here? Maybe this second error. Oh, it's actually inside my template. Duh. Thank you. Yeah. So actually, this is a really interesting thing. This is something that I hope that we can improve. Like, the Twig's error handling is really smart and also really complex. So you see what happened here is we actually ended up with 2 exceptions. The real exception is the second one. I hate when this happens when I'm coding. Like, this is the helpful one. If I look at this line, that like immediately I can see what's going on, right? But instead, the first error was actually wrapped in it. So it's basically saying, hey, here's where the problem was, but really it was on the other one. Not sure exactly how much flexibility we have on that. Honestly, I have a feeling that that Twig might let us have more flexibility here. So we basically want to tell Twig, hey, we're having when an error happens, in this case, we actually want like this error to be the one that's actually shown, not the actually component listing one or component rendering one. Anyway, something that hopefully we can improve in the future, but just watch out for that. I mean, that's true of any time in Symfony. If the error exception message doesn't make sense, I always kind of look down and see if there's a second exception message that might actually hold the helpful thing. Boop. Ta-da! And now we are screaming out all of those planet names. Cool. All right. Shall we move on to something else? Let's see here. One thing I wanted to do, this is a really easy one, but it'll show off another kind of feature of the Twig component stuff, is buttons. So buttons are really easy when you're using Twitter Bootstrap. They're not so easy when you're using Tailwind because they just have a lot of classes on them that you don't want to repeat over and over and over again. So yeah, the Twig components start to make even more sense when you use something like Tailwind, where you really don't want to repeat all those classes. So let's go into, let's see, what am I on? Planet. Let's go into Planet. And let's see here. Here we go. So I have a button right here. This is actually my save button. And then I have another button inside of here, which is for a delete button. So you can see all the classes that go into building the different buttons. Wow. Including in like dark mode and light mode. So this is definitely something I do not want to be repeating in every single case. So in this case, there's a good chance that having a button component would be a good idea. And I'm going to create this one by hand. So let's say button.html twig. So I'm going to actually skip the component class this time. And oh yeah, Tailwind totally feels like inline styles as classes. It's weird. Like, everyone hates Tailwind, and then they use it, and then most people seem to love it. I actually totally love it. And one of the reasons that I love it is because there's lots of just UI components out there that you can just use. So this is Flowbyte. It has a bunch, it's not entirely open source, but it has a bunch of things that are open source. So if you're going here like, oh, I need an alert, you can just go in here and just find the alert that you want. You're like, oh, I need this danger alert, and like, boom, you just copy and paste that in your project, and it works. So it's one of the things I like about it. Also, for better or worse, AI really knows Tailwind really well. So you can ask AI to generate you different UI components with Tailwind, and it's going to do not a perfect job. It's going to give you a really decent start on those. All right, so let's do our success button here. Boop, there we go. This form no validate is absolutely specific to my specific usage of it. I actually don't want that form no validate in this case. Basically what I'm saying is what I want to do is when I use this component I'm inside of my template, I'm going to pass form no validate there. I don't want form no validate on every single situation. And for now I'm going to keep all the rest of the styling. We'll just make this just a success button to start. Now, two tricky things about this. One is the content, right? So like the easiest thing to do would be to like say curly curly content right there. And then we could say button, and then we could say, we're not going to do this ultimately. This feels terrible to me. Oh, I'm doing the wrong. Twig button. Content equals save. And I'll just leave that there for now. Ta-da! So it works. This is an anonymous component. I didn't create a PHP class for it, so that's nice to see that. But what I really want, right, is this inside of there. And actually, this relates to somebody asked, can you pass more complex variables, array objects to components using the Twig HTML syntax? Yes. Sorry, I saw that question earlier and I missed it. You can do that. If I had a prop called like stuff, then you could pass like stuff here, like, and if stuff is like an object or an array, like that's why it works. Because one of the other things that you can do, and it actually works pretty well in this case, is you can actually do this. So in this case, notice I didn't do the colon. This is just like good old style Twig, right? And that totally doesn't work. Let's see, button label. Why didn't that work? I don't know. Let's try something simpler. It's not the way that I want to do it. Oh, it did work. I'm just looking at the wrong spot because I deleted it, dummy. I deleted it from down here, so of course it doesn't work anymore. Of course that's empty. So yeah, you can do it this way. If you had something that was an array like this, pretty sure you can use this syntax, but this looks terrible because it looks like you're going to print the array. Pretty sure internally we just like grab this array and pass it in. But that's one of the reasons that the colon syntax works, because like this looks wrong to me. So instead, in reality, you would do this. Now, one other thing is like, notice we don't have like syntax highlighting as soon as we use that colon thing. That's just a matter of time. We already have partial Twig component support from the Symfony plugin. So you can see, like, when I do Twig colon, it's already picking up planet list. It's not picking up button. I need to have that be uppercase button. That only worked because of the case-insensitive Mac file systems. So that would not have worked on production. But you can already see that it is picking up the non-anonymous components. The Symfony plugin doesn't pick up anonymous components yet. It doesn't do syntax highlighting on these. It's just a matter of time, hopefully. So we are getting support, but it's not there entirely. Anyway, there we go. So this works, right? But I don't actually want to pass in content that way. That seems really ugly to me, especially if what I really needed to pass in contained HTML tags. Like, yikes. Like, imagine I wanted like a span inside of here with some other like class or something like that. I don't even like to think about it. So instead, what we're going to do is that. So this is like one of my favorite features, especially with the HTML syntax, is you have the ability to pass content in. And what happens internally, this is really cool because it's so familiar, is this just becomes a block in your template called content. It's that simple. So over here, block content and block. And you can even put default content. You know, with a button, we should always override that, right? Ta-da! So, and like, this is how I want to code here. So now if I want to put, I don't know, let's put, what's that site? Tabler. Tabler icons, open source icons. This has been my like cheat thing lately. So let's do a plus icon. I'm just going to copy the SVG and I'm going to paste it in just like that. Do not need these classes. You can keep those if you want, but they don't do anything. So point is, I'm putting an HTML element inside of here. Nobody cares. It actually works. Maybe a little bit big, but it works and it doesn't cause any problems. So the other kind of tricky thing with this situation is that I want to pass in, remember that? So I'm passing form no validate because it makes it easier for me to test my validation, honestly. It turns off HTML5 validation so I can just like submit this form blank and see my server-side errors. So it's something I use a lot in my tutorials. And right now, that's not going to work. You can see here we have all those classes. And the reason, of course, is that inside of here, I never rendered that attributes variable. Right, so curly attributes, and now it's going to come out, but that's still not quite perfect. I mean, that part of it's perfect, form no validates, because especially with Tailwind, what if we need to pass in some extra classes? So let's see here, wrong template. So let's say form no validate, and I'm going to say class equals, let's see here. I'm not going to guess. Let's just do everything correctly, right? It's text size. There we go. Font size. There we go. So let's say we're going to make the button really big. So text 2XL. How about that? Cool. So if we do that, weird stuff happens, and I bet that all or some of you know why. If we end up here, we can see we have just the class and we don't have our other classes. And actually, if we look inside of here, we do have the other classes. We've done such a great job that we've been rewarded with 2 class attributes, which makes perfect sense, right? So we pass the class 1 here. We still have the class 1 here. So this is like one tricky thing with attributes. If you do have your own attributes that you want to pass on an outer element, then you need to actually pass them kind of through the attributes. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it works really well. Only just because I don't like having, I don't know, like HTML attributes inside of Twig code. So you call defaults, and then you can pass in your class right there. So this is normally, the purpose of this is normally, let's see here. Let's think of another one. Data-foo. So the purpose of defaults normally is actually to be the default attribute, and then we can override it. So if we have data-foo set to bar there, right now if we refresh, easier to see over here. You can see we have data-foo equals bar. And then if we go over here and override that, data-foo equals changed, then you can see it replaces it. Class is special, however. Class is the one thing where we actually merge the things together. So instead of replacing, when you pass the class here, instead of having this replace all of your classes inside there, it just pops it on the end. So we end up with all of the existing default classes plus our class on the end. So it's kind of a special case, but it's sort of what you want. And yeah, now we can pass in custom things. And now our gigantic text matches my gigantic tabler plus icon. Yay. All right, cool. So let's see, that's a button. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. So what you might want to do is actually add like a type to this. So we're going to have maybe success buttons and danger buttons. So let's just do type equals success, kind of bootstrappy, right? But I don't want this to come out as an attribute type, which is of course what it would do right now. We have a little like type equals success there. I want to hint to my template like which classes it should have. Should it style itself as a happy green button or as a angry red button? So when you have an anonymous template component like this, it seems like there's no way to pass in variables. Like what I basically want to do is pass in a type variable so that inside of here I can do different things based on that type variable. With a class-backed component, right, we could add a public property and it would populate that, but we don't have a class. In this case, we could create a class really easily. That's probably a really good idea, but there is a different way. Hold on 1 second. I see 2 questions here. Would it override default text size? Guessing so, since it's on the end due to specificity. Such a great question. That's a Tailwind specific question. Actually, this is a great example of it. Look at this right here. Awesome. So in this case, this is actually kind of a bug in what I did. So notice I have a text SM by default. And then at the end, I have text 2XL. So you might think, and I totally did until recently, that the text 2XL will win over the text SM because the text X2XL is later, right? That's total BS. Does not work that way. There's nothing inside of the way classes work that says that a class name that comes later should override one that comes earlier. In fact, the only reason my text 2XL is winning over my text SM is that by complete chance, in the final generated Tailwind CSS file, which we can actually see kind of right here. So this is the actual generated Tailwind CSS file. So this is what's kind of being built in the background by Tailwind. By complete chance, it generated text SM before text 2XL. If it had generated them in the opposite order, and that's totally possible, it just generates them like in the order that it finds them in the code, then the text SM would have won over it. So this is a bit of a tricky problem. Where am I going here? And so if we wanted to be careful, okay, so what I want to say about this, it's totally Tailwind specific. But this is a case where, like, if you did have this, if you did want to have a default size on this button and you did want to be able to override it, you might need to instead pass in like some sort of size variable. I'm going to talk about how to turn this into a variable in a second, and then dynamically render the class based on that. Because we basically need to have it where we don't have both text 2XL and text SM on there at the same time, because it's not going to work the way that you want it to work, or it might work, but it's just kind of like lucky. Or you might have a variable called like maybe minimal. Minimal equals true. And we can use that minimal variable to, if it's minimal is true, like maybe we put just the most important classes on by default, but we leave off the other classes like the sizing on there. And the last thing I want to say about this, I just learned about this yesterday, and this might actually be a really cool thing to make accessible inside of Twig Components, or somehow really easily accessible. It's called here we go. It's called Tailwind Merge. So this is a common problem in Tailwind. So there's actually a PHP library where you can pass it 2 sets of classes, and it'll actually figure out which ones are the problematic ones and remove them. So in this case, you see that we're passing in BG red 500 and BG blue 500. So in the final output, it detects that those are controlling the same thing, and it removes the BG red 500 and only outputs the BG blue 500 on there. So that would be like the most robust solution. And so we would like it become, yeah, it'd be kind of cool. Actually, let me just make a note of this. Maybe the Tailwind bundle gives us a way to do that. I'm not even sure what that would look like, because you almost want it to, you almost need it to happen inside the attributes. Like once the attributes gets its final defaults and merges them with the classes that were passed in, then you want to run that through that merge tool. So there might need to be a hook inside the attributes rendering system itself. It's something that you need to think about. Anyway, long answer to a short question. Wouldn't the data controller also be an attribute to merge, so you can pass an additional stimulus controller beside the default ones? Yeah, actually a really good point. The data controller currently, this is another thing that I don't love. So yeah, like, what if you did data controller foo, right? And out here we had, this is great. This is becoming like a Frankenstein monster of trying things. Cool. Oh, it does actually merge. Ha, see, I didn't even realize it did. So yeah, I can see it does merge. We thought about that. Apparently we thought about that and then I forgot about that. So yeah, it does do foo and bar. The reason I'm not totally happy with that is that if you just use the data-controller format, that's really easy. If you want to use the stimulus controller format, I can't even remember how to do this. Twig Components, stimulus controller. Oh, okay, that's not bad. Yeah, okay. Let's copy that. So you can also pass stimulus controller to defaults like that. Now that should look really weird to you because this is supposed to be a key value pair, right? So this is a array or a hash. So you have class colon, and then suddenly here I just like smash out just like a function call. And yes, unless I'm forgetting about some magic like that, will explode because that's the wrong syntax. But if I remember correctly, I think you can do this. Ooh. Watch, I'm going to celebrate and then it's not going to work. Oh, I don't have stimulus installed. Boo. Let's get stimulus installed. Aha. Probably still won't work, but it works. There we go. So you can see here, data-controller, my controller. So that is one way to output it. So I guess that's actually cooler than I thought. I said I didn't like that. We just need to document this ... syntax on there. That ... syntax is relatively new to Twig. I use it more and more, so you can do that. So let's see. This is becoming a monster. Let's remove that. And I'm going to get rid of this minimal. Good, 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 good. All right. Let me see here. I'm over here. Checking the chat. Yeah. To Kevin's thing, yeah, it feels like we need a way to mark whether you want to override or merge or override, prepend, append. I've kind of had that same thought. Like it's the reason I think that doesn't exist is because you don't really need that until you start using Tailwind. And then with Tailwind, because you have so many base classes, it's really common, I think, to think, oh, I want those base classes and I want to add something to it. Or you're like, oh, no, I want to, in this one case, not have those classes. I don't know. It's still not clear to me. Honestly, like, sometimes I feel like I want half of the classes, and so that's where it makes sense to like pass in a variable, like some maybe true/false variable, like I did that minimal a second ago, and then just dynamically render half of those classes based on that. I don't know. It's not super clear to me of what the best path is there. Can we have multiple blocks inside of a button component? Absolutely. So let's do. Example of that would be, let's see, what would we put inside of a, I don't know, let's say div here. Div block button footer. I'm going to get really fancy with this. Then we're going to have HR. And then we're going to, there we go. Kind of a silly example. So over here, not over here, there we go. The content inside of your tag becomes the content block. But you can also make another block if you want to. Like that. See if that works. Boop. This is another one where it looks like the error came from. Well, I actually did, yeah. No, I just messed that up inside of here. Never mind. Block, and if. Come on, Ryan. Ta-da! So there you go. I assume I actually do have an HR in there. I'm not sure if you can actually put an HR inside of a button. Probably not, but there you go. It rendered correctly, even if it doesn't look like how I imagined it in my head. You also, if you want to, you can have a fancier syntax in here. We have a twig block name equals button footer. Boop, like that. And then there we go. So, you know, if you're going to go HTML syntax, then might as well go full HTML syntax. And that works exactly the same way. So why not use some option resolver for dealing with attributes? It's kind of a wrapper for array replace. I would love to see like a usage example of what you're thinking about. I'm not totally wrapping my head around it, but I like where you're going. I think that there could be an opportunity there. All right. Okay. Last thing with this is type success. So as I mentioned, you know, maybe we want to have type success, type danger, and we want to be able to do different classes based on that. Right now, if we do type success, no surprise, that just renders as a type success on the actual, as an attribute. So in an anonymous component, if you want to say that something is meant to be a variable, or a prop as we call them, and not an attribute, you can do that with the prop syntax, which I'm probably gonna have to look up because I can't exactly remember the syntax for this. So let's see, props type. I think we can even do type, give it I think we can do that. Let's see if I have that syntax correct. I do. So we're not using it yet. The important thing is you saw that the type disappeared as an attribute, and now it is actually being rendered, or it's not being rendered, it is now a type variable. So just by putting this, converts it from an attribute into a variable. It needs to be on the top of your template, obviously, before we actually render our attributes. And there we go, success. So now that we have this, we can get kind of dangerous. So I'm not going to do it this way yet, but basically, let's see, text white, like this part here is basically the stuff that's specific to the type. So what we can do here, this is a little ugly, I'm going to ultimately do this a different way, but we can use the rare tilde, and we can say type equals success, then let's do those, else. Just for simplicity right now, I'm going to assume that we are in a danger button. So let me just go steal some classes for danger. And there we go. And I'll paste those in as well. So that's kind of what I meant about, that's exactly what I meant about passing in a variable and then having like a different kind of set of default classes based on the variable. So there we go. Oh, I lost some rounded corners for some reason. Oh, probably because I don't have a space there. Come on, Ryan. Ta-da, they're back. And then we can go into here. And let's go type equals danger. Ta-da! It's weird to see a red button, red angry looking button with a rainbow on it, isn't it? All right, so that kind of works. It limits us to just two different types unless we really want to get ugly and crazy with our stuff. So this is at this point, this is when I would actually create a, there's enough logic, I would create a class behind this. So the cool thing about this is we can start with an anonymous component, and then we can fly over here and actually create a class that will be used. So as soon as this class is put here, when we render button, the component's going to see this class and use it. Well, not as soon as it's here. The other thing we need is we need to say as Twig component. So that's really all we need. And now it should use this as a class. Let's actually, now we don't need the props anymore. I think you can still use it like this, but this is really meant for anonymous components. So instead I'm gonna say public string type equals success. We can get rid of the props. And then I'm going to make a method here called get type classes. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? Let's match on type. And look at that. So lazy. I don't need all those things. But I was kind of hoping it would. There we go. Unknown type, and of course not type, right? This arrow type. No, comma. My bad. Why doesn't it like that comma there? Oh, because I forgot the default. There we go. All right, cool. And let's go steal the real classes for this. There we go. And over here. So you can start to see how you can create a little UI toolkit with these things. And another thing is I want all this to be as accessible to front-end people as possible. So that's one of the nice things about having like the HTML syntax. Like there's definitely some Twig stuff going on here, but ultimately when we use it, front-end developers need to know about this like Twig :button thing. But after that, they can just like put whatever attributes they want on it, and those attributes actually will work correctly. So let's see. All right, so we have this. So now we just need to say, we'll still use the tilde, but now we'll just say tilde. I'll say this dot, and then we called our method get type classes. So I'll say type classes. Cool. So just moving that logic into our template. Type equals success. Cool. Type equals success. And it looks terrible. What did I do wrong here? Did I not? Because I don't have a return statement, do I? Yeah, I debugged that pretty fast because I've done that a lot of times before. There we go. Changes to danger. And we've got that. So this is cool. So this is the end thing where I can just use this. And that looks a lot like any front-end framework component, right? Twig :button. All the attributes work. We can have this special type properly pass in, put the HTML inside, and that's it. I hope your imagination is kind of like taking you on all the different reusable things that you can do. So this is an example where like you could also, in theory, you could have like a button template that you include, right? But this is where it really starts to suffer because I want the ability to pass in extra attributes in a really clean way. I want the ability to have a little bit of like extra logic inside of here. So, it's a situation where you are growing out of the include. It's too much for the include, so you can put it into a Twig component instead. Can you use HTML classes function for that? That depends on what the HTML classes function is, because I can't remember. There's not that. Wait, is that a class? What is it? Wait, what is HTML classes? Did you mean something else, or did I forget what that was? Can't button PHP and button.html in the same folder. Oh, I love that you asked that. I'm gonna make a note about that. Component and template in the same folder. I've seen a few people ask this. Oh, the Twig HTML classes. Oh, yeah, not the PHP. I'm sorry. Let's see here. See, I didn't even know this existed. Or if I did, I completely forgot about this. Yeah, this is great. So HTML classes, and then you have a bunch of conditional ones based on that. So yeah, you could do that. It might end up working out really well. Can you put multiple classes here? Like, because I would want, what I want, right, is I'd want like, here I would have like type equals success, right? That's the condition. And then here I would want like 5 different classes. So assuming I can do that, like, yeah, I think that would work fairly well. Yeah, so about the question about having our component class in the same directory as the template, I don't know. Like, people have asked me about this. I totally get it, because you have something right here and then you have something all the way over here. Can't we have those next to each other? I don't know. What do you all think about that? Because one way or another, something is going to need to live where it doesn't normally live, right? We're either going to need to have templates that are living inside of the source directory, which is totally allowed and totally legal, or we need to have PHP classes that are living inside of the templates directory. Also totally legal, also a little bit weird. I don't know. It's certainly something you could set up yourself right now. I think probably if you wanted to put like your templates right inside your source directory, you can set up Twig namespace for that. Twig.yaml. I don't remember what these namespace. I don't remember what paths, I think, is what it is. Anyways, there's a way basically inside of here to like add additional paths, so you can actually have Twig look at your source Twig components directory, and then you would have name your templates so that they look inside of there. So it would probably be a little bit of teamwork. Let's see here. Twig namespace paths symphony. How do we do that? Yes, this is old documentation, but it's probably still valid. There we go. So kernel, project error. Let's see here. Let's try this. Just for the heck of it, right? And I don't know if I could. Yeah, let's do it. I'm gonna call this @component. So it basically means that like all the paths in here are gonna a valid template path here would be @components /foo.html@twig. Actually, I need to not have the here, but it will be there. Yeah, I meant like a Drupal module called single directory components. Oh yeah, they do have that. I need to look into the Drupal thing. I've heard about that single directory component, so maybe I need to look into that and get some inspiration for how they do that. Let me make a note of that. Like Drupal single directory components. But let's see if we can get this to actually work here. So, in theory now, let's try it. Let's try it for both of them. This is. I feel like I'm right on the cusp of probably breaking things. So I've moved those in there. In theory, their names, like if you just wanted to render them normally inside of your project, it would look like this, if I am remembering this correctly. And so in order for this to find those, there's two different ways we can do this. One, there is, inside of here, a template, and we could say @components /button.html@twig. There we go. Let's see if that works. I don't know if it will. It does. Wow, this is easier than I thought. Or you can be even cooler, I think, and go into your config packages twig component.yaml. It's actually a great question, great segue. And we can say, you know what? In the all of the component classes in that namespace, they're all going to be inside of the @components directory, which of course now points into our other spot. Oh my goodness, it works! I'm so happy right now. That was so easy. Cool. So I don't know. I still don't know if it's like a good idea. Or it's like if it's a good idea for default use cases, like if we should ship it this way with Twig components. If it is a good idea, at the very least, there will be a large group of people that will freak out if we put Twig templates inside the source directory. That doesn't make it wrong. It just means that that would happen if we ever shipped it like that in core. But that, at the very least, is a really cool way to document it. And you saw like how easy that was. You could take an existing project today that already had 50 Twig components in it, and you could just move them into the directory, change those 2 lines of code, right? The twig.yaml, add this line here, add a little @ symbol right there. Boom, everything would continue working. Yes, winning. All right, well, let's keep them in there. All right. What was I doing before this? I don't remember anymore. Probably just answering questions. Well, let's see. Let me check my stream thing here. So as I mentioned, I was going to go into Twig Components and Live Components, but we might only get into Twig Components today, and I can do Live Components at least more or less on a different day. Looking at my notes here. Cool. Oh, another idea I had, and hopefully we could get a library that does this, but an icon component. So you can imagine, instead of me inlining this, I'm not actually going to do this, but instead of me inlining this entire SVG that I copied from the internet, it might be cool to be able to say twig icon name equals, and then whatever the name of that actual, so okay, so like something like tabler plus. Right, something like that. That'd be pretty sweet. I would like that. So that's something that you could create yourself, but it would be really cool if we had a library that did that. Put my SVG back. And probably the one thing that I do want to show with Live Components right now, and then I'm probably going to stop so that I don't take up 2.5 hours like last time, is the new lazy loading. So let me close up a couple things here. I'm going to go back to the homepage. So remember, homepage, we have this Twig planet list thing. And this makes a database query. So what it means is that on the homepage, of course, there's a database query made to fetch all those, and this is rendered synchronously. So one thing you might want to do is, if this is heavy, is you might want to say, you know what, let's load this side thing here via Ajax. Let's just lazily load it. As soon as the page loads, let's make an Ajax call for that. So that is one of the use cases for Twig Live Components. It's like barely using Live Components, but who cares? So I'm going to install Symfony UX Live Component. So Twig Components is a pure PHP library. It's everything we just saw. It's just a really cool way to render Twig templates. Live Components has a PHP side of things, but comes with a JavaScript library. So this is going to be the thing where you can actually make your Twig components reactive. Like when the user's interacting with them, they actually re-render themselves automatically via Ajax. But we're not going to worry about that quite yet. Let's see if I broke anything. Everything looks good still. So I installed that. The JavaScript package should already be working. So if we want to promote, see, that was cool, right? This is actually coming from the Symfony plugin. I can hold Command or Control and pop into the class. Anyway, if we want to promote this to a live component, we can say as live components. And that's all we need. Now that by itself is not going to make any difference, because a live component is a Twig component that can then re-render itself. But if you don't actually do any of that fancy re-rendering kind of stuff, if you just take a Twig component and make it a live component, nothing changes. Oh, except I get this error. Live components require the default action method __ invoke. So that's a little internal detail that has to do with how it re-renders itself. We're not even going to need that, but it is required. Someday Kevin Bond might get rid of that. Hint, hint, since he's here. Cool, so other than having to add that one thing which we're not using, it works exactly the same. But because this is a live component, we can now, this is like a new thing in the latest version of live components. So I'm kind of obsessive about just keeping things short. We can say defer. Actually, just defer. That's all. I think that's all we need. There we go. So did you see it kind of blink there? That's because it's loading via Ajax. And you can actually see it right here on our Ajax calls. Ta-da! So that is loading lazily. So to prove it, let's make it really slow, right? Ooh, it's fun to put sleep in your code to celebrate when you make things lazy. So the page should load instantly. It's not going to wait for that sleep, but then this will come in a second later. Wait, I didn't like that. This did come in later, but this also... that also, you see that took too long. That was not the result I expected. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. Or if that maybe I'm using this incorrectly. So this did come in via Ajax, but the page itself also took, there it is right there, also took 1 whole second to load. You can see it down here, 1,776 milliseconds. The question is, why did it do that? I'm wondering if this expose in template is making it, even though the template is not originally rendered, I bet it is. Oh, that's interesting. So I think this expose in template, even though the template's not actually being called on the normal page load, I think this is causing this method to be called on the initial page load. So let's actually remove that. And I'm going to go to my template for this. So planet. I don't have to type in the file name because we put it right next to the component. Boop. And I'm going to change this back to this.planets. There we go. That fixed it. That is an interesting thing. So I have to think about if that's a bug or if that's just something that we need to document. Expose in template, not lazy with deferred. Cool. So the page now loads fast. This loads a second later. Boom. It just works. It's awesome. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's because it needs to prepare the planets variable. The question is, should it need to, or should it be smart enough to know that its rendering is being delayed, and so the real template's not going to be rendered, and so therefore you don't need to prepare the planets variable. It probably shouldn't need to prepare the planets variable. That's a relatively new feature, so that's just not something that honestly we had like thought about yet. But now it's lazy, and of course it just works, so it's awesome. Of course, the one thing right here is like it doesn't look great when there's nothing there. So if we want to add some loading to this, we can. Let's see here. Let me think. So there's 2 ways we can do this. The way that I like is this is all in the documentation. You wouldn't have to memorize this. I think it's called loading content. I think that's what it's called. There's a Twig block. So it's actually really cool. The way this works is on initial page load, because we have defer, the rendering of this component is hijacked, and we actually change its template internally to be a template called deferred.html at Twig. So this is actually the template that's being rendered like on initial page load. And so you can say here, yeah, we have a block called loading content. So I almost had it correct. Loading like that. There we go. And of course you can make this fancier with, some sort of loading animation. In fact, let's see, I just did that yesterday. No, I'm not gonna spend time doing that. Yes, just yesterday I did this for something. Grabbed a spinner from here. So this is the kind of stuff you can do. You can grab a spinner like this spinner, for example. Let's see, what's the spinner I used? Let me search for loading. Here we go. This is the one I think I used. Yeah, so you can use this SVG, and then with Tailwind, you can very easily add a couple classes that will animate a rotation on it. And you get really nice loading animation. Nicer than just saying the word loading. Cool. Let's see here. Questions. Is it possible to share data between instances of button.php? Tell me, Sebastian, why you want to do that. The answer is basically no, but I'm interested in what you're thinking. Yeah, they would be separate instances. They wouldn't even really be aware of each other if you were rendering like 5 different buttons on the page. Let's see here. All right, so like total last thing. I'm not going to go very deep into this. And I probably won't even do it right. But there's like kind of one other super duper, super de-duper, de-duper superpower of Twig Components. So it has nothing to do with live components. And it has to do with blocks. You know what? I'm not even going to do this. I just want to point this out in the docs, and then I'll let everyone go on their way. So Twig Components, let's see here. Good. I'm going to pop this over into the chat real quick. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into super details about this, but this is an interesting use case where you're like, hey, I want to have a component that's actually like a table, right? Because maybe you're just using a lot of the same, same classes and stuff on all of your tables. So, at first this looks pretty straightforward, right? We have, I guess we have a div around this table. We don't need to have a div around this table. We have div, we have a table, we like loop over like headers. So we pass in like the headers that we want inside of there. And then you can also pass in the, like some data to this, and then it's going to loop over that and render it. So it's kind of like relatively straightforward. And let's see here. Is this? Hold on a second. Is this even the right spot that I want to look to? You know what? I'm gonna give a simpler example here. This is something that I want to build, but it's still complex enough. I don't know how it works. I'm not sure how it's gonna work in my head. So to the thing that I want to show is, so let's imagine. We're going to do planet list. Here, yeah, this is going to be good. Okay, let me get the planet list back up. All right, so let's say that we use this planet list component in multiple places. And when we do, we need to render the, let's say we need to render the light years differently for some reason. Maybe sometimes we write it out like this, other times we like format it in a different way, and we need to be able to control that. So what we can do is right here, you can see this is where my light years are rendered. We are going to surround that with a block. In fact, let's actually surround this entire area with a block. Let's call this block planet details. Right? So what this means is when we use this on homepage.html twig, we can create a twig block here called name equals planet. What do I call planet details? I really need to decide whether I want to use underscore block names or camel case. But for now, I'll just mix them ugly. Right? So it means that, right? We could override the planet details. And over on the homepage, we override the planet details. Yay! And of course, we could also call the parent function. I say of course, that's actually pretty cool and complex. So when you use the Twig syntax, you have to pretend like whatever you have inside of it lives in its own template that extends the planet list template. So you can almost imagine this is in its own template right here, and at the top of that template it says extends planet list.html twig. So that means just like normal, when you're in a block, you can actually call the parent block to get the parent block's contents. Super powerful concept. Now, even more powerful here is, let's say that we do want to add some extra planet details in just this one case. So I've called the parent function, so I get the parent details. That's really cool. But now I want to add, like, I don't know, the ID, right? Whatever. I'll take that autocomplete. But like, how do I do that, right? Like, like, I don't even have the planet variable here, right? Because I'm just rendering planet list. Well, it turns out you do have the planet variable. Dun, dun, dun. And if I actually refresh, that works. This is probably the craziest thing about the way that this works. This is not actually special to Twig Components. This is just how blocks work inside of Twig. So I'm going to remove the parent function here just to clarify that that's not important. So when you override a block in Twig, now remember, like, we need to basically pretend here like we're extending planet list.html Twig. Like, that's actually what I want you to have in the back of your mind. And also, just for simplicity, I'm just going to do, what did I call that? Planet details. Just for simplicity, I'm going to use the normal Twig syntax to, like, remove variables here, right? Just make it nice and simple. So imagine we have a template that looks like this. Turns out when you override a block from a parent template, you actually get access to the variables at that moment. So internally, it's as if Twig takes our content when it's rendering this, copies it, pastes it right there in that spot, and renders it. So the fact that we have at this moment, we have a variable called planet, means that in our child template over here, we have a variable called planet. So that is a super powerful concept. It's a little bit more, it's not like that common of a thing to need, but we almost decided at one point to like change the way that the blocks worked in Twig Components to make them kind of slightly simpler. And then we realized that because we're leveraging the Twig block system, we got this superpower, and we're like, no, we're not changing it. That's incredibly powerful. So we kept it. And I don't know, just want you to be aware that you can do that because it's awesome. Ta-da! Also, a quick shout out to one of the people that is a contributor to Twig Components and Live Components. The fact that this works is mind-boggling. If you think about this, this is being loaded via Ajax, right? So there's actually a Ajax call. I think we can actually just copy it right here. Boop. Oh, that's right. Now it gets because of a content type, it actually thinks it needs to download it. That's something I want to fix. But anyway, there's actually an endpoint. When you get that endpoint, it renders that template. That is incredible because in order to render this template, Twig actually needs to find where we rendered this component inside of homepage.html.twig so that I can grab this content right here and use it when it's rendering planetlist.html.twig. And that all happens via Ajax, and that actually totally works, and I didn't build it, and it's incredible. You can actually see it a little bit in here. There's like some really complex data host template thing, which is a kind of a hidden key to exactly which template and which part of the template that we need to get the kind of embedded template. You know, it's basically like it's a really super secret internal way of specifying that exactly where it can find this code here so that I can ultimately render that via Ajax. Anyway, I'll stop talking about that. Sebastian got more info to me. When button.php is called first time, I can load some data. When the component will render the next time, I can use this data directly. At the moment, I have to use some cache or an extra service. That's a really good idea. Yeah, they're not aware of each other because they're almost like independent services, you know, like a foo service and a bar service. So when you call something on foo service, like that data is not going to instantly be available. You can of course use like a static property if you want to. Like, you know, static properties are not always the coolest thing, but really if you want to, you could create a static property inside a button. You could populate the data there, and then you could use it. Otherwise, yeah, you're gonna have to use some sort of caching because there's nothing. Other than them having the same class name, there's no actual data that's shared between the two. And Kevin, I agree. I also did not think that that thing I was just explaining with the embedded templates was live. By the way, we call this embedded templates or embedded components when you put content inside of it. I did not think that was going to work with live components. Happy that somebody proved me wrong. It just kind of shows the power and insanity of Twig. Can live components and turbo blocks be combined? Like one user works on data managed by a live component and other users' browsers get that update. Let's see here. Let's think about this. Like one user works on data managed by live components and other users' browsers get updates of that. Oh, yeah. Yes, so what you would do there, my bigger answer here is I think there's more opportunities for live components and turbo streams to work together. I kind of have some ideas and some places I would want to use that. But yes, without getting too far into it, let's say that planet list is actually a form, right? And so we're actually like changing planet data. And so inside of live components, we can have something called a live action. And basically, when the user clicks submit, an AJAX call is made to this action. So I'm not going to go over those details right now, but this is where we would, save new planet data to the database. And then the question is, if you're familiar with turbo streams, is how can I, send a turbo stream update through Mercure. So this is a case where I'm working on editing this planet's information, and Kevin is on a page that has that planet's information. And when I save here, I want his browser to automatically update without me needing to do anything. So this can be done with turbo streams and Mercure. And I think we don't need to do anything special here because basically you can just broadcast the Mercure stream update from right here. So you would, what is it? I don't actually have it in my project. Or do I have it in my project? No, I don't actually have my project. Whatever, I can't remember if that's the right type in, but you get the Mercure broadcaster and you broadcast the update right here. This is a service, and this actually is a controller, so you can auto-wire. You can even auto-wire the Twig environment if you want to render some Twig templates inside of here. So yes, you can do it. The reason I was talking about like better integration is not even ignoring Mercure. It might be cool at some point to, when I save something, to actually return a stream. So I'm not broadcasting to other users, but I return a stream so that it updates my live components and maybe to also update some other element on my page. And right now that's not possible. You can't return a turbo stream from a live action. Yeah, in many cases that would be jarring from a UX perspective. Make sure the context makes sense for changing data on other users like that. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a really, really cool feature. Might not need it in lots of cases, but there are plenty of good use cases for it. All right. I'm going to stop talking there. I don't know when. Let me know if you guys are enjoying this, like other stuff you want to see. I thought we'd get more into live components, but we'll just save that for another day. And I have some other ideas of things to try out. I asked on Twitter, a lot of people want to see forms with child collections, which I hate, but that's probably why we should talk about it. And if there's anything else that you want to see, modals are a really big one. We can try those. So probably not next week because we have Thanksgiving here in the U.S., but sometime soon we'll hop on again and we'll do some live component stuff. All right. Jan, you asked, the first user would receive the same update, so there is a delay on the second update, right? Correct. And that is true, like even without live components. I've seen that before where, yeah, like I have a controller, and in my controller, I dispatch the stream to Mercure, but then I maybe return something for a turbo frame. So yeah, the turbo frame and the update from Mercury actually will not happen at the exact same time for the user that's seeing it. Cool. And if you guys have any ideas or questions, or I mean, just like anything, like, you know, again, part of this is to show people stuff and play with stuff and hit errors, but part of this is to get feedback, you know, like this thing of, hey, how, you know, can we put the templates in the same directory as the components? Let's push this stuff along together. Please use it and let me know where you're having trouble, and we'll add, you know, we'll work together to add the stuff that's missing. All right, I'm gonna go, as I like to say, do my real job now and make tutorials and other stuff. All right, see you everybody.